This episode of What's the Story podcast is brought to you by Gary Mackle and Mackle Makeovers. Out there, painting and decorating in this kind of weather is exactly what people need for an old summer boost. If you think Thai green is just a curry, or you think Vanilla Sky is just a Tom Cruise movie, you need Gary in your life. Get in touch with us, get in touch with Gary. He'll set you right. Interior Design 101 right there with Gary Mackle. Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. This is WTS 347. I'm Danny Murray.
I'm Graham Merrigan. How are you, Danny?
I'm absolutely fabulous, mate. Absolutely fabulous. The weather has me ruined. Fierce sweaty.
Fierce sweaty. Morning,
But
noon, and night.
it's a good boost though, because we'd be complaining if it were coming up to the June bank holiday weekend and it was cloudy and rainy, which apparently it might be for the actual weekend. But the last few days, stunning.
Absolutely stunning. We'll take it and we'll love it and we'll keep enjoying it. But it's starting to get a bit humid at night at the bedtime, and that I will complain about. Thank you.
Yeah, I like to be able to sleep in comfort when I do get to sleep. Mara, we have a very interesting episode this week.
Go on, tell me. Who are we talking to?
Well, the Enhanced Games, which is basically the Steroid Olympics, took place in Las Vegas last weekend. And this thing is I'm just going to call it out for what I believe it is. It's a clusterfuck of just nonsense, right?
Grifting.
Grifting 101, yeah. It's backed by Peter Thiel, Donald Trump Jr. and his investment corp, and a couple of other billionaires who saw an opportunity to, and I know you don't watch The Boys on Amazon, but essentially what they're doing is trying to inject humans with this cocktail of drugs to turn them into their very own version of superheroes, very much like Vought in The Boys, which is a great show if anybody hasn't watched it. Just insanity. Doping in sport is something we've talked about before, and we've talked about sports washing, and we'll continue to talk about these things because they fascinate us. And there's a lot of people, thankfully, who know a lot more than we do on these topics. But the Enhanced Games, when I first got wind of it a long time ago, I thought there's definitely going to be an episode in it, and then I kind of forgot about it. Then it happened at the weekend, and when I saw what a failure it was for what they were trying to do versus what they actually achieved, I couldn't help but laugh. Just laugh.
It's always going to be a failure, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think this is the thing, and we get into this in our conversation with our guest this week, and our guest is Bruce Wardrop, who knows a lot more about this than we ever could. The reality behind the Enhanced Games is that they were always there to basically turn athletes into poster boys and poster girls, sell this image of what you could be, so then you would buy these supplements from the crowd behind the Enhanced Games and all that kind of stuff. Just
kind of like an Alex Jones podcast back in the day.
Yeah, a little bit.
Finish on a topic and then he put the vitamins down at the bottom of the screen.
All that kind of crack. 100% that's it. And it's very much an experiment in the grift and a hope of, well, if we invest this amount of money into people believing us, they'll buy all our stuff and we'll get tenfold that amount back, is what you're dealing with. So a shit show of the highest order is how I would...
Will we go straight to the interview?
Well, I have to give the man an intro, Graham, would you? You know, I mean,
Sorry.
it would be rude of me not to be
Go
fair.
for it.
So as I said, right, so we're joined by Bruce Wardrop, who is a scientist who specializes in performance physiology. He is a lecturer in Southeast Technological University. He's based in Waterford, and he lectures in sports and exercise science. So when it comes to human physiology and kind of what that means in relation to sport and elite sport, Bruce knows a lot more than we do. You can take our word for that. He's worked with the Irish Paralympic athletes across a couple of games, and he has his own podcast which delves a lot deeper into the world of sport and exercise science and that kind of thing. But we heard him on the radio during the week talking about the enhanced games, and we said, yeah, do you know what? There's a guy who's breaking this down in a very useful way, being very honest about it, and it'll suit us to have a chat with him. Thankfully, he agreed. So that's enough out of me. Let's hear from Bruce. Bruce, firstly, thanks a mil for taking the time on what is one of the sunnier afternoons we've had in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to join you, lads. I am sweating here sitting in my home office, but it's always good to sit and chat about these things. It's fun to talk about these things, interesting and fun.
It is, it is. So, right, the enhanced games, myself and Mero being fascinated by this and the the questionable characters behind it on one thing and the other. What is your take on it now? The games took place last weekend as we're recording this, so the dust is very much settled and whatnot. But what's your take?
Well, I have lots of takes on it, but my take is that it was a flop for the organisers. So part of their grift in the run up to it is that they were going to promise us superhuman feats, all fueled by their performance enhancing drugs. A spectacle of superhuman performance is what I think they said it was going to be, and it was
Oh my God.
yeah, and it turned out to be just a spectacular failure. I think for many reasons. So I think the couple of headliners are okay. There was one world record was broken in the pool, by the Greek swimmer.
Yeah.
Now, so that world record, right? Okay, it's not a world record. First of all, because he's on performance enhancing drugs, but also he was one of the first things I noticed when he was diving into the pool is that he was wearing one of the skin suits, that used to be legal in swimming, but they've been banned since about 2010, I think. So that's the full body, the long pants, and the upper body skin suit, and those suits aid the swimmer with their buoyancy. I can't remember the science, but I think they were designed something to do with shark, like the way a shark's skin is, so that they can cut through the water a bit more smoothly, reduce turbulence. So those suits are performance enhancing themselves. And I had a quick look back and I said, like, ballpark over 50 meters, which I think was the event he broke the record in, you'd be looking at like zero point 0.5, half a second for the suit alone. And the record was broken by 0.07, seven hundredths of a second. And the skin suit is good for 500ths of a second. So undoubtedly the performance enhancing drugs gave him a benefit, but you couldn't extricate whether it was the drugs or the suit that broke the records in the pool there. So that was one. But now, of course, the organisers are going to be waving that flag around now. That's going to be their big success. There was a world record broken for sure.
The only thing they have to cling to after it, really. But
I think so. There's not much to cling to. And in fact, what I saw today on Reddit, now I haven't verified the accuracy of it, but someone said that the stock price, so that the enhanced company behind the games, then this is the company that was set up to go on after the games and sell testosterone replacement therapy, to sell peptides, to sell all these things that are going to make you live longer and look younger and perform better. That's what this was all about. That was the back end, that this enhanced games was a vehicle to draw attention to a company that was going to sell these on a subscription basis afterwards. And the thing that I saw this morning, well, it was I shouldn't be using my hands to illustrate things when I'm on a podcast, but basically it was a stock price nosedive is what it was. This morning there was a big drop in the price, the valuation of the company, because of how unsuccessful the games were.
That was expected though, wasn't it, Bruce? I mean, like, I'm just wondering, how did it from it was in Vegas, wasn't it?
It was on in Vegas over the weekend, yeah,
Yeah.
on
So
Sunday.
I'm just wondering, like, I was reading over the weekend, um, in the professional wrestling world in New York, there was a pay-per-view show, and the New York State Athletic Commission wouldn't allow them. Now, professional wrestling, as we're all aware, is predetermined and it's a theatrics essentially.
Mm.
But the New York State Athletics Commission wouldn't allow them to wrestle in the crowd or wrestle in certain areas beyond the squared circle. So if you, I'm reading that going, how did they get involved in this? But there's no state athletic commission, I suppose, in Las Vegas that's trying to stop this. Like, there's nobody from an official. I know we're living in a different time in the States, but it just feels like other than the journalists on the lead up to it. It feels like from an official governing body or some sort of NGB didn't kind of go, right, lads, this has to stop. This can't happen.
Yeah, well, like it was all unsanctioned, but like it wasn't. The athletics weren't being governed by the IAAF. The swimming wasn't governed by FINA. The weightlifting, and that was the three disciplines they targeted. They targeted the pool, and the pool events were all short. I think it was like 50 and 150 meters, or sorry, 50 and 100 meters maybe, or even less, 25. Anyway, it was short distances in the pool. On the track that they had, it was short distances in the track, and it was weightlifting. So you couldn't have picked more strength and power based sports. The ones that are like, in theory, should be the ones that get the biggest bang for the buck from the performance enhancing drugs that they're taking. Now I've kind of gone off your original question there. So these were all unsanctioned by the governing bodies. And I don't know whether I'm mixing up fact with fiction here now. I could be watching too many TV programs and Hollywood movies, but isn't it often a case that when there's something a bit, if they're looking to get an event sanctioned to go ahead, is Nevada just that little bit more lenient? Apologies to anyone from Nevada here, whether I could be talking rubbish, but I think maybe, cash. Yeah, cash is king, and maybe the MMA,
the Nevada State Athletic
Commission. They permit a lot of more things to go on that maybe New York or other countries altogether wouldn't permit. Maybe there's more stringent rules.
Different. There definitely is. I think the history of MMA and UFC in New York State compared to Nevada, it's only in the last, it's a little bit more than recent history, I suppose, but for years the UFC wanted to get into Madison Square Garden, and because of various different things between the unions and State Athletic Commission and one thing and another, they couldn't. Nevada has always been, particularly for Vegas, it's always been more lenient, as you say, and
for the boxing and things like that as well.
Exactly.
There's been over the years, plenty of athletes in MMA and in boxing who might have failed drugs tests in the run up to fights, and somehow those fights always managed to go ahead.
Yeah.
And speaking of the MMA, did you see the pictures there over the last couple of days of the MMA being set up at the White House?
Yeah, that's
I haven't seen that yet.
I mean, from one circus to the next.
Just while we're on it, we may as well mention it. Like I saw this big aerial picture looking down at the White House, and you've got to one side, you've just got a huge building site where the ballroom has been built, and then that classic iconic facade of the White House where the arch comes out at the front of it. They're throwing in a UFC ring in the middle of it. It is bizarre. It's weird.
It is, and it's that
absolutely
whole
bizarre.
At no other point in presidential history would something like this even seem plausible, let alone it's actually going to happen in a couple of months. It's truly bizarre.
And of course, the Trump family, to bring it back to what we're supposed to be talking about, the Trump family were involved. They were backers for the enhanced games. So, if there's a grift and there's money to be made, they won't be too far away from it.
I was going to say, you mentioned grift at the start, and like the Trumps and grift to go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
But not just the Trumps, though. Like Peter Thiel is heavily involved in this as well, and again,
controversial character.
I was going to say, we're talking about characters who you maybe wouldn't want to trust with your personal details and all that. Like he's got a coloured background, and I think wasn't he one of the ones as well that was involved in the early days of OpenAI, and when Elon Musk and Sam Altman they're not so close and buddies and pals anymore, but Peter Thiel was definitely involved in the funding around all that crack going on as well. So it gives you an idea of the characters that have been involved in this, as you said, grift, with the whole idea being let's make the athletes a walking talking billboard to hawk these supplements and peds and everything else that we're looking to make money off.
And that's the thing. So, another big talking point around us, particularly for the Irish athletes who entered, was the fact that they said, right, we're doing it for the money. And loads of the athletes said they're doing it for the money. And you know, that's hard to argue against. You know, if you hear about an Irish athlete who gave everything to their sport for a couple of years, and you know the way the funding works in Ireland is that there's a pot of money available, and whether you agree with it or not, the pot of money has to be divvied out between all the athletes that are there, and the athletes are categorized. According to their ability. Are you an international athlete? Are you a world-class athlete? Or are you a medal potential athlete? And obviously your medal, if you're an athlete who's deemed to have the potential to medal at a major international event, you get the most money. If you're a world-class athlete who's going to be competing and qualifying for world-class events, you get a little bit, you know, not quite as much, a little bit less. And if you're an international athlete who's going to, you know, international competitions, but maybe not the biggest competitions yet, you get less money. You know, and the amounts that the athletes get when the, you know, the rest of us hear them, it doesn't seem like that much. So Shane Ryan was saying that he was only getting 18 grand a year. He was classified as an international athlete, so not a world class athlete and not a medal potential athlete. And 18 grand, not a whole lot of money, you know, to live on. And they don't have the earning potential of a Premier League footballer. They're not going to have advertisers knocking down their door looking to give them huge amounts of money. And particularly like if you're in a sport where there's, you know, jerseys or there's equipment that you can get an endorsement deal on, you might have more opportunities there. But it is difficult. So, but that's a whole other question. Like, how do we fund our athletes? It's a whole other discussion that needs to be had. And you know, if they want to give more money to the athletes, money has to be taken away from somewhere else, and then you know, someone else is not going to be happy. But anyway, you know, so it's hard to argue against that. I understand the temptation that's there for the lads entering this to get the prize, or to get the entry fee, or like that, because they were guaranteed money just by competing. And then the way the race, the swimming was set up, there was only four swimmers in the pool at a time, and there was a guaranteed first, second, third, fourth place. So even if you finished last, you got a payday. So there's guaranteed money there. But like you just said, the reason what set me off on this rant is
we love a rant here.
The backers, the funders are using these athletes as billboards. They are a marketing tool. They're getting paid for sure, but the whole point of them getting paid is to say, look what happened. Well, was supposed to be, look what happens when these athletes take our performance enhancing supplements that you can buy after the event, and they were going to, whatever money they paid those athletes, they're going to make way more. Even though the stock prices crashed, they're going to make way more off the back end of these athletes. So it might, and I've thought about this a lot over the last while. The athletes have got their payday, right? But what does it cost them is what I kind of think about. So they're going to be blacklisted from their own sport going forward. So any sort of a career in coaching, any sort of career as a pundit in the media, anything to do with swimming now, they're not going to be allowed to do. With the Irish lads, they're not going to be allowed to do it because they were both swimmers. So, you know, if you were, I think Max McClusker, did he come away with 50 or 100 grand? I'm not entirely sure. But if you spread 50 or 100 grand over what maybe he might have done over the next 20, 30 years, you know, working in sports, you know, that maybe the math doesn't math so well if you look at it like that. And then there's the health risks that go with it. So in the short term, there's definitely health risks with taking these performance enhancing drugs. So, you know, I saw a list of what they said the athletes were taking. 90% of them took testosterone, 80% of them took human growth hormone, 60% of them were taking stimulants like Adderall to amp up their central nervous system. You know, if you want to be on the start line and go, amphetamines will do that for you. Then they were taking EPO. So what it didn't say though was, what's the mix? What's the cocktail that these athletes are taking? So they weren't saying, right, athlete A is taking A, B, C, and this other athlete's taking D, E, and F, and so on. But they were undoubtedly taking a cocktail of drugs. And there's acute risks. Now, it would appear that most of the athletes have got through the weekend without anything happening to them. But the acute risks for anyone listening would be like, say, if you take EPO, EPO is what it would have been big in cycling. That's would have been the Lance Armstrong, and it's looking to enhance your endurance performance. That's kind of what everyone would think about it. But there's been a couple of Chinese weightlifters have been caught for EPO as well, which you'd be kind of thinking, well, why are they taking it? Because it allows them to do a greater volume of training. Even though they're not an endurance athlete, having that extra oxygen carrying capacity in your blood, it means they can get more training done to get more adaptation from the training. But thickening, like having more of those red blood cells carrying more oxygen, it makes your blood a bit thicker. And if you thicken your blood to a certain point, it's not going to flow particularly well around your body, particularly when you're not exercising. Say when you're asleep at night and your body is nice and calm, your heart rate is nice and low, your blood isn't circulating particularly quickly around your body. And when your blood is thick and when it's not circulating particularly quickly, it likes to clot. And if you get a clot in your blood, that can be, we probably all have little clots floating around in us somewhere at the moment. But if one of them finds its way into your brain, you might have a stroke. If it finds its way into your heart, you have a heart attack. If it finds your way into your lung, you might have a pulmonary embolism. All bad news. Yeah. So nothing acute, nothing short term appears to have happened over the course of the weekend. But that doesn't mean the risk is gone for these athletes. So some of them, I know they said they were taking the performance enhancing drugs for a relatively short window, but some of them were taking them for up to 2 years. And the longer term effects, they do increase your muscle mass and they make you bigger and faster and stronger. But they don't just work on your muscles. So your heart gets a bit bigger and thicker, and the structure of your heart changes. And that's not going to be picked up over the weekend. That's going to be picked up down the line. And once that's kind of silent damage. And until it gets picked up, you don't know it's there. But once it's there, it's irreversible and it's a big, big problem. Like I was in touch with someone I know. He was a student of ours down in Waterford, and he left the course in third year to go off and pursue a career in bodybuilding and to become an online personal trainer. And after he left us, he was quite open about the fact that he was taking anabolic steroids. Like he was on his social media, he was very open and honest about it. But not like within the last year, I saw on his story he was in hospital for something, and he was in and out of hospital a few times. So I just reached out, and he's told this story on his publicly on his social media, so not like betraying a trust or anything like that. But yeah, his blood pressure was through the roof. He was having really bad headaches, and when they went into the hospital, he found out that he's got issues with valves in his heart, and that's from taking steroids. And this guy is only like in his late 20s.
It's so happened to that bodybuilder in Limerick. He was a great online person.
Padwire,
yeah.
Yeah, he died suddenly. Now, I don't know specifically what it was, but again, you look, you'd have to assume that there was something associated with performance enhancing drugs.
Especially so young. Well, even younger than him, there was like at lunchtime today, I was flicking through social media, and there's a 22-year-old bodybuilder in Brazil who was a fairly big social media influencer. He dropped dead at the weekend, and they're dropped dead last week, and they released the autopsy, and they said it was this cardiomyopathy, the enlargement of his heart, that caused his heart just to basically stop working properly. And so the risks are really, really significant. They might have got through the week. How many took part in the games, Bruce?
There was 42 athletes, I think, took part, and four of the 42, I think 4 of them went into it clean. So that's an interesting thing which we need to talk about as well. So just before we leave the risks, like there's long-term risks, like even taking performance enhancing drugs for a short amount of time introduces long-term risk for athletes, for anyone, not just athletes. So your heart, your liver, your kidneys are all under pressure. Your other organs are under pressure. For males who take it, like if you start taking testosterone when it's not prescribed to you, when you're not needed, the irony of it is that your body goes, oh, whoa, I've got loads of testosterone here. I'll stop making my own testosterone. So then when you stop taking the testosterone, the extra testosterone, your own body's natural testosterone production may not come back online. So you then have to go on testosterone to keep it back up again. So you take exogenous, so you take external testosterone. It shuts down your body's own production of testosterone. Sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't come back, the solution is to go back on exogenous testosterone again. It's bonkers. It's mad.
It's mad, but I think, and I definitely want to get onto the point around the clean athletes, but just while we're on that, like there's become in the last couple of years, I guess, there's this kind of weird thing where it's almost become normalized for these conversations around. I'm going to say, like, casual testosterone usage has become so, and a large part of that has been through things like the kind of the US podcasters and stuff like that. Like, there's a huge amount of, I know everybody bangs on about the Joe Rogans of the world, but even comedians like Tom Segura, Bear Kreischer, all these kind of people are almost normalizing this thing to their audience of like, oh yeah, I just take testosterone. Oh yeah, it's great. It gives me this boost. It gives me this. I feel great after taking it. And any young lad listening to it who's kind of feeling like I need something to, like they're going to take that influence and they're going to apply it in a way that they shouldn't. And especially like the availability of stuff in America is a whole different question mark. And
not even just that, like even over here, I'm sure if I wanted to, I live in a small town in Tramore, in Waterford. I'm sure if I put my mind to it today, I could go out and come back with something this evening. If I really, really wanted to. And I feel for younger guys, like I'm as much as I hate to admit it, I'm slightly older. I'm of the age now where my social media is sending me advertisements for testosterone replacements because it reckons I must need it. But you're right. So it absolutely has filtered down from the top. So maybe the likes of Joe Rogan, I don't know exactly what age he is, but maybe he might have got prescribed testosterone almost fairly legitimately. Let's just hypothesize that, and he started to feel great about it. He's got the biggest podcast in the world, and he starts saying, "Oh, geez, I'm taking testosterone. I feel great." So you've got people coming out from that angle. And then, social media has exploded and there's so many, people who are into health, fitness, wellness, optimization on social media. And they, everything about them is based on how they look. If you want that algorithm, if you want someone's attention on social media, it's got to be visual first. There's no point, having a nice essay written or a big podcast episode like this where we get to the point 10 minutes in. If you haven't got someone in the first second or two, you're not getting their attention. If you don't have your attention, you're not going to get whatever else you want from they want your emotion then after to hook you in. But it's all about how they look and whether no matter what they're promoting. It's like that Liver King fella who, do you ever see him? Yeah.
Yeah, awful. That Netflix documentary was horrific.
Actually, I haven't watched the Netflix documentary. I think I started it one day, but I didn't finish it. But he's a prime example of a fella, like, come on, just any sort of common sense would tell you that he's juiced up to the eyeballs, yet he was selling us this carnivore diet. But it's, and we've even moving away from someone as extreme as him, you might have someone who is just, regularly healthy, fit, lean, muscular, have well, I say air quote here, a desirable body composition, what they think people want. Loads of them are going to be enhanced. Just because they're not absolutely massive bodybuilders, they're still enhanced. And it's insidious then. So anyone looking at social media, they might be hearing it from Joe Rogan on one side and they're looking at someone on the other side saying, oh, this is me and this is what's achievable. And it's coming at you from all angles. So it is, I think normalizing it again to another degree through the enhanced games is dangerous. It's dangerous for vulnerable young people and particularly vulnerable young men, I think, not sexist to say that, who will think that, well, look, if it's good enough for these guys, maybe it's something that I might be interested in. Or as a thought experiment, let's just say that the enhanced games was a really big success and they broke all the world records and it started to grow and it happened to be an annual event, or maybe then it starts to creep out. And then all of a sudden, if you want to participate in it, you have no choice but to go on performance-enhancing drugs. So even though they were all about autonomy and the athletes are choosing this, again, this is something I'm trying to wrap my head around, right? But you can only really be autonomous and you can only really make a free choice if there's no coercion at all. And these guys were being financially coerced. And then the people below you, they're going to be coerced into it. So really, the autonomy isn't there. There's a deeper kind of philosophical thing going on with this that doesn't sit right with me too.
It's completely fraudsters.
The the element in of the clean athletes, the clean
Yeah.
athletes. This is fascinating to me because, as you said, like all the incentives are there for them to pump themselves full of these cocktails and to, push the limits of human endurance beyond whatever we can imagine, and all this kind of almost the TV or film like fantasy. What's the motivation for the clean athletes and all of this?
So that kind of caught me off guard because in the run up to it, I didn't realize, right? I presumed, right, everyone's going to be in it is going to be juiced up. They're all going to be on performance enhancing drugs. So, like, literally on the last Friday, just before the weekend, I saw that there was a clean athlete. And I was like, why is the clean athlete? And so I read an interview with them, and it was Hunter Armstrong, who's an American swimmer, who's in the prime of his career at the moment, and he's aiming to, I presume, he's aiming to qualify for LA. Maybe he has already qualified for the LA Olympics. So if he wants to go to the LA Olympics, he has to be a clean athlete. Now, look, I know probably there's going to be someone at the Olympics who's going to sneak through the testing net, but for some reason, and you might call me naive or not, I think Hunter Armstrong can stand over because A, he's a high performance athlete aiming for the Olympics, so he's going to be tested by WADA. And then B, here's the big thing. He announced that he was going to take part in the enhanced games. So WADA are going to, whatever spotlight was on him beforehand is going to be like this intense magnifying glass pointing on him now from an anti-doping point of view. So he was tested regularly by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency. He passed all the drugs tests. There was nothing going on there. And then on top of it, he did the testing that was done by the enhanced games, and they said that he was clean as well. And he won his event. So he entered for the prize money because like our Irish athletes, the American athletes over there, they're not getting paid huge bucks, and he needs to fund his run at the LA Olympics and maybe beyond. So by entering the competition and getting into the pool, even if he finished dead last, I think he was guaranteed 50 grand. So I think he was in 2 events. I can't remember how many events he was in, but so that was his motivation. His motivation was also money, but he was just coming at it from a slightly different angle. And then there was 2 athletes on the track, the athlete who won the men's 100 meter and the female who won the women's 100 meters. They also competed clean, and I'm pretty sure there was a 4th person as well, and I can't remember who they were. But that was the other big story, and that was a real, like, thinking Mortal Kombat, a real fatality to the enhanced games, that the three of the really high profile clean athletes in their marquee, their high profile events, like the 100, like it's like the Olympics, the 100 meter final for the men and women. It's the one that everyone knows about and we're all watching. And they were won by clean athletes who were tested. So what does it tell us, or what can we deduct from it, is that, well, taking the performance enhancing drugs will enhance your performance, but if you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the other characteristics of an elite athlete, taking performance enhancing drugs is not going to turn you into an elite athlete or a world beating athlete. Might make you a bit bigger, might make you a bit stronger, might make you lose a few pounds, make you run a little bit longer, all those things. But you're still going to be governed by the limits of your body. Even if you're pushing them beyond the natural limits, there's still going to be limits, if that makes sense. So you can't create an elite athlete out of thin air just by taking performance enhancing drugs. That's one thing that stands out to me. And then the other thing that stands out to me is, as much as the organisers want you to believe, it's not going to reverse the aging process. So a lot of the athletes that did enter the enhanced games were retired or into their 30s, and in most of these events, like, you don't see too many athletes in their 30s who are winning Olympic medals. Maybe in marathon or a different type of event, but not the strength, speed, power events that we see. It's generally a slightly younger person's game. So the athletes who were touted as doing well, there was a guy, James Magnuson from Australia. He was like the poster boy for the whole event. He finished dead last in the 2 events that he entered, despite all the performance enhancing drugs that he took. So the clean athletes winning, fatal blow for the organisers, and I think it shows us that you can't create an elite athlete just by taking performance enhancing drugs, and you can't reverse the aging process by taking can't completely reverse the aging process by just taking performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And kind of it leads you back to the point you were making there a few minutes ago around this kind of you need the instant impact and the visual impact, and it seems like their best chance now of hawking their wares isn't going to be through these soups and these incredible athletes that they've created, but now it's going to be the ultimately shredded 8-pack joint bicep guy you see on Instagram or on TikTok who's selling this to you, and that's their best chance of peddling whatever it is they want to. Because I mean, the amount of money, the purpose-built stadium, all that kind of stuff, I'd be amazed if they decide to run this back for a round 2 next year.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I was thinking about as well, right? So it worked really well. They like, okay, you're a billionaire, like they can throw money at anything, but this isn't scalable beyond, well, it'd be too far beyond what they did. So, 4 athletes per race. Let's switch it up to another sport. Let's say we wanted to allow performance enhancing drugs in the Premier League. How many players are in the Premier League, and how much are you going to have to pay them to take performance enhancing drugs beyond what they're already getting paid? Or, maybe the Premier League is a bad example because they're already getting boatloads of money. But, if you to scale it to go beyond 4 athletes per event, the GAA, right? Yeah, let's say the GAA, to go beyond 4 athletes per event and scale it, it's not feasible. You couldn't, like, the money is not there to do that. It's doable on a small scale like this, right? We'll get in a small number of athletes who are willing to take the risk in return for the money to be advertising tools for us. That's where it's at the moment. It's not scalable. And I was put together. Jesus, despite my age, I was trying to put together something for TikTok today, and some of the images I was pulling down to use into it, like these, the swimmer, like undoubtedly they're ripped, they're shredded, they're jacked, they look great standing on the side of the pool, but they don't look like any swimmer I've ever seen before. If you look at the swimmers down over the years, there's a certain kind of look or a certain kind of shape to them, and that's because that's optimal for swimming. That's what's optimal. Yeah. It's like being the Incredible Hulk diving into the pool is not optimal for swimming. Likewise for, if they had marathon running, like taking a load of steroids to get completely jacked is not going to win you a marathon, because being jacked is counterproductive in a marathon.
Exactly.
Bruce, stupid question.
No stupid questions.
But were they actually tested after their games?
They were tested in the run up to the games. So there was some stuff, I say published, not maybe scientifically published, but released to the public on the testing. So that's where what the figures I was quoting earlier about the athletes taking testosterone, taking human growth hormone, taking EPO and Adderall and other down at the bottom.
That came from the testing, did it?
That came from the testing. That came from the enhanced games they released.
There's no post-game test on them.
I think it said that they are going to be monitored for a period of time after the games.
That'd be interesting.
I would to see well, do they stay taking the drugs? Do they keep do the lads keep doing it, or do they decide to switch it off? There's always a thing of retained benefits. So in the beyond the enhanced games, just in general, if you're talking about athletes who get caught taking performance enhancing drugs, one thing from a physiology point of view, my background would be in exercise physiology. From a physiology point of view, if you or I go to the gym and we do a load of weight training without performance enhancing drugs, we will get a little bit stronger, our muscles will hypertrophy and grow. And part of that growth process is that they develop these special cells. They're called satellite cells, and they're what help generate the protein to generate the muscle, to increase your muscle mass. So a regular person, if you go to the gym and you train for 6 months or a year, you'll get a little bit of extra muscle. You develop all these extra satellite cells inside your muscles. And then let's say you take a break, whatever. You stop going to the gym, or your life gets in the way or whatever. And you take that break, you might lose the muscle mass, you might drop back down a little bit, but you keep the satellite cells. The satellite cells that you developed during the first round of training are still there. So after you've taken your break and, you might look at yourself in the mirror and go, I'm after losing all that muscle, I better get back to the gym again. You go back to the gym a second time around. It's easier to regain the muscle the second time around because you've got some of that adaptation. You retain some of the benefit Okay. And that's without performance enhancing drugs. If you are an athlete and you do take performance enhancing drugs, that whole process happens to a greater extent, right? And if you get caught for doping, you serve your ban, you come off it, and you stay clean for the rest of your career, you'll still retain some of the benefits that you got from when you were on performance enhancing drugs. So I don't quite think lifetime bans are the answer, but harsher. I think there needs to be harsher bans for athletes who take certain types of performance enhancing drugs, because there's a retained benefit long beyond the time when they're actually actively taking the performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. And I know, like, look, the way they test for drugs, the way they test for these performance enhancers and everything, it's got better over time, and it continues to get better. But it seems like for the longest time, the dopers and the people, who are helping the athletes dope and whatever, they've always managed to be one step ahead. And these retained benefits, and I'm gonna conflate things. I'm gonna mix things up. I can't remember if David Brailsford ever did get proven, but I mean, these whole things of marginal gains.
Marginal gains, yeah. And we all bought into it. We all believed it. Like, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, let's put our socks into a wind tunnel, and the socks will make us 0.01% better. And that's not going to win you a race. But if you put your socks and your helmet and your bike and your jocks and everything into the wind tunnel, that was kind of what they were doing. But they were just turns out they were just doping as well.
Exactly, yeah, the classic jiffy bag. But it is, and it's a conversation that, look, it's fascinating. There's 101 different directions you can go with it and everything else. But these enhanced games, for what it's worth, like,
where they broadcast them?
They were they were online. You had to tune in. Now, they were on overnight, so they were. Yeah. I was interested, but I wasn't interested enough to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning to watch them. So they were. I think they were streamed live on YouTube and a couple of other places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think, again, like that, the hope was that this would be a roaring success. They'd run a part 2, and at that point, then you might get, like that, some of the guys who are favourable to Trump and Thiel. I'm after forgetting their name now, but
Ellison.
Ellison,
yeah. Oh, they'd pick it up.
Owns half the TV networks in America now, but those kind of guys might decide, there's a bit of this for us now. We'll make money off it as well,
Yeah, so it was kind of like, I feel I had absolutely nothing to do with it, but sitting back and looking at it now, you can't help but feel a little bit smug that it didn't work out the way they wanted it to.
But come here, when does a grift ever work out?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a house of cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me think. Sorry, you go on there, Danny.
I was just going to say, I'm very conscious of taking up your time as well here, Bruce. So
I love talking about this.
Yeah, that's the problem. You see, so do Merlo and myself, and we could go on for hours and hours. And we've done episodes about this, and there was a long time there where I was just adamant there's no such thing as a clean sport at all, and it was almost like a very bad version of when Tommy Tiernan said we should just do the steroid Olympics, and that's what these lads probably trying to do.
That's it. But it's one we all want to believe in clean sport. We all want to look at the Olympics or look at the All-Ireland final or look at the Champions League final and believe that the athletes who are out there are honest, they have integrity, and they're setting a good example for everyone around them. And that's what we want to believe in, right? And I think that's what we need to believe in to a certain degree. But I think you'd be foolish to believe it absolutely, because when you think about human nature and, if there's, human nature and money, that's a breeding ground for people operating in dodgy areas. But just from competitive spirit and people wanting to win or being proud about what they do, there's all sorts of temptations to do things. I have a good story that I'll share with you. My mum passed away back in 2018, and she was sick for only a short amount of time, about a year. But towards the end, she was suffering from kidney failure, and she was in hospital and she was on dialysis. And as part of when you're in kidney failure, one of the prescription medications is EPO. So she was prescribed EPO to help with the anemia and stuff that she was experiencing when she was in hospital. But again, I can't remember the exact reason why, but for some reason, even though she was in hospital, they gave us the prescription, and we had to go and get I think it's because it's rare, it's probably expensive or something like that. We had to go and get the EPO from our pharmacy and bring it into the hospital and give it to them, and they were like, "Okay, thanks very much. We'll give that to your mum." So anyway, one passed away, unfortunately. And I remember going up to visit my dad in Dublin a couple of months later. And, every time I went up to visit him, there was always something to be done, little jobs to be done. And one day he goes to me, "What am I going to do? Come into the kitchen. What am I going to do with this?" And he reached up on top of the cupboards in the kitchen and he pulled out this bag from the pharmacy and he goes, "A day or two before your mum died, I had to go and get her prescription and I had to fill her prescription. And then, sure, I never got to bring it into the hospital and it's just been sitting here ever since." So I opened it up and I was looking through it. And here was a big box of EPO, right, in the thing. And at the time now, I was never a good athlete, but I was doing stuff competitively. I was a competitive recreational athlete. And I was looking at this and I was like, this is legally obtained EPO. And the little hamster wheel started going around in my head. And I was like, I felt like your man in The Hobbit. I was like, well, why shouldn't I take it? And I really, not like for a couple of minutes, I was like, this would be really interesting. I could do a little study or a little experiment on myself and see what would happen if I took the EPO. And then I went, actually, hang on a second, that's ridiculous. Don't right, that's stupid. So we brought it back to the pharmacy and was disposed of, right? But that really opened up my eyes because I wasn't an athlete aiming to win a world championships or qualify for the Olympics or to secure a sponsorship deal that was going to change my life forever. I was just a random Joe who enjoyed competing against other fellas down in the gym and the odd competition here and there. And I seriously, like for a couple of minutes, I seriously considered taking this EPO. So then I said, put it in myself into the athlete shoes and said, right, if I was the athlete who wanted to qualify for the Olympics, or I was the athlete trying to get an endorsement, and a lot of time proper research would say that a lot of times coaches are a main source of drugs and information about drugs for the athletes. So say I was a young, impressionable athlete trying to qualify for the Olympics and the coach says, well, look, everyone else has taken this. And if you want to make it, this is what you have to take too. The temptation must be unreal. It must be very, very difficult because it was difficult for me in that split second to try and make a proper decision.
Yours is more curiosity, though, I think, Bruce, as opposed to getting a competitive edge in the sport, There's no only...
There's a few young fellas in the gym now. I wanted to teach them a lesson.
Show them age is just a number.
Yeah.
No, but you're dead right. The temptation factor, and as you say, when there's potentially very lucrative things that come off the end of that split second decision that somebody might make that decision seem a whole lot easier for them.
Yeah, it is. And so what started us talking about this was, right, we all want to believe in clean sport, but I think it's foolhardy to believe that every athlete in every sport is clean. There's always going to be someone who's trying to get an edge in an unethical way. But you have to believe, and I like to believe, that the systems are in place to try and minimize and limit it and make sure that any drug use is underground, it's subversive, it has to be done in the shadows, and it has to be done these days in microdosing. So they can't take, I don't know how much EPO you're taking a go, but you can't take a big syringe full of EPO at a time these days because you'll get caught. You've got to microdose it, which limits the performance benefits that you're going to get. And to a certain degree, then it levels the playing field. It means the dopers aren't miles ahead and the natural athletes are more competitive. But there's always going to be dopers. There's always going to be someone. That cat and mouse game will never, ever end because there's too much at stake.
Absolutely. And that's what make this topic constantly interesting. But Bruce, again, constant time, man, and really, really fascinating chat. We could go on for hours, but we'll leave it there for today. And you also host the Irish Sports and Exercise Science Association podcast as well, if people are fascinated by this.
Very well done. Now, we don't just talk about drugs. I've been trying to get someone from anti-doping to come in and talk to me on it. And I think just with the enhanced games coming up, they're all reluctant. So I would like to do an episode on drugs and sport. I haven't done one to date, but yeah, the Irish Sport and Exercise Science Association podcast. We cover a whole. It's aimed at the Irish sport and exercise science community, but it's very much like our conversation here. It's very relaxed. It's very conversational. We don't do big technical deep dives. So I like to think that it's accessible to anyone who wants to tune in, and that we cover a range of topics. We have athletes come on to talk about their experience in sport and exercise science. We have academics, we have practitioners, we have like patients who've worked in certain programs. We've got a whole load of different people giving a whole load of different topics. So yeah, definitely go and check that out. There's bound to be an episode or two that might pique your interest.
I would definitely say so.
Hey, thanks so much, Bruce.
It's been a fascinating chat, man, and we really, really appreciate the time. And we'll no doubt come knocking on your door again when something piques our interest.
Do. I love it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
You're welcome, lads.
Fascinating and interesting chat, that. And I would have talked to him for about 4 hours more, man.
Yeah, well, you're just listening because it's so interesting. But it's such a fake grifting world, though, isn't it?
Ah, it is. Like it is. And I was delighted he called that out bright and early.
Yeah.
There was no messing about. He didn't hide any sort of opinion or any sort of notion that this thing had anything other than a money making racket behind it. And really, really, I think he nailed the point around the risk that people are taking by, look, the payday is the temptation, but the long term risk and the potential health issues that you face by engaging in this kind of thing, is it really worth the 50 grand now?
No, that 50 grand will be pissed away in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, if the prices
it's not sustainable, and the games aren't going to happen again, considering it was such a failure. So there's no market for it.
I don't think they'll happen again, but would I be surprised if they did? I wouldn't, based on.
I don't think the Saudis are coming on to back it anytime soon.
No, I can't see that happening. No, but like these guys have they'll double down or they'll triple down, or it's just the wrong mix of athletes for their ideal cocktail. And you wouldn't be surprised if every couple of years there's going to be a cycle of new athletes. It's the only thing I didn't think of when you're talking to Bruce. Like every couple of years there'll be a cycle of new athletes who have got to that point in their career where they can't compete at the highest level in terms of Olympics or European championships and that kind of stuff. They may become the guinea pigs of showing you can't turn back the clock.
I don't think so, because there doesn't seem to be any financial backing in order to pay the athletes anymore. So, and if these grifters aren't making money from it, they won't be interested in it.
Well, and this is the only thing. This is what we have now. The share price, as Bruce said, right, the share price has plummeted. It's down 40% since the end of the game that we're recording midweek. I mean, that hasn't stopped these grifters doing shit before, right? And especially especially when Trump is involved.
Exactly, and with that share price, the only reason why that share price would go up is if there was a TV deal, and there's not a TV deal happening now after the failure of it.
May not be a TV. I don't know. There's just something in me that says as I said, I don't think it will happen. But with the characters that are involved, they're not the type to just take a licking like that and move on. There's
two egos.
Exactly. There's an ego there that just says we're right and we're going to prove it. And let's not forget, America is the most naive and easy to manipulate group of people. That's a sweeping generalization, but so look, a fascinating topic, a circus, a sideshow, whatever you want to call the enhanced games. I'm glad it's over, but I'm not drawing a line under it. Yeah, I reckon we haven't seen the last of it or some version of it with the same crowd.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But their egos would have taken a hit this weekend, and I'd say it'll take a while for them to recover and to come up with a new plan if that happens.
Yeah, I think if their supplements didn't sell, I don't think they'll give a crap about the actual games themselves. It's more so they'll be looking at the stock price definitely, but also the numbers in terms of like how well have these supplements peddled out the door. But anyway, look, that's
it's interesting chat from Bruce, the gentleman.
Absolutely brilliant, and yeah, delighted he took the time to talk to us. So that's it for this week, Miro. I'm going to go now. Get the old speedo on, get out into the back garden, into Haley's paddling pool, and enjoy the rest of this sunshine.
Well, if anyone else wants to listen back, you can go to WTSpod.com, or you can search WTS Pod on any podcast provider. Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get a podcast, just type in WTS Pod. I'm at American Laney on Instagram, he's at Danjo Murray at Instagram, and we're at WTS Pod at Instagram. Until next time, who knows when it will be, we will see you then. Clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose. Too sweet.